Hello, BookTube. It's been a little bit. Anyway, sometimes you just have to read a Stephen King novel. And this one is Stephen King from a Buick 8. Now, say what you want about Stephen King. He himself has described his works as a literary equivalent of a Big Mac and fries. And he may not be wrong. But the thing I like about Stephen King is that he can tell a ripping yarn. And I blew through this book in about 3 days. And there's a reason why his books are, million sellers. And here's Willie. Can't decide whether to come in or out. If he gets in, maybe I'll pick him up. Hold on. Hi, Willie. I'm sure he hates me. Say hi. Yeah, right. Anyway, Stephen King from a Buick 8 starts like this. Bring it up a little bit. Once upon a time in western Pennsylvania, a cop by the name of oh boy, I'm trying to think of his name. Good, I should have taken notes with this. There was Nick Curtis, Ken Curtis. Hey, maybe I should just read this. In State Troop D should be Trooper Ennis Rafferty and Curtis Wilson. That's it. Curtis Wilson gets killed in 2001 by a drunk driver while he's checking out a blown out tire on a 18-wheeler. It's plowed by a drunk driver who we'll come to meet in a minute. And of course, his son left behind. Now, let's see if I get his name. We have Curtis as his dad, and Kurt. Let's see. Kurt's avid curiosity took the lead. Kurt Wilson killed in a gruesome car accident. His 18-year-old son, boy, Ned. That's it. His son, Ned, is feeling empty inside since his dad's death. And of course, he's a junior in high school. And of course, he feels gutted. He feels aimless. So he decides to show up at the troop barracks and start doing odd jobs just to kind of get close to his father, to fill a hole inside. He starts doing odd jobs. They show him how to handle a dispatch, that kind of thing, and then eventually they decide to tell him the story about the Buick that's in the holding garage. It's been there since 1979, and they come to tell Ned. I always confuse their name. Ned. Sorry. They come to tell Ned that once upon a time at the gas station, this Buick pulls up, and the guy who was manning the pumps at the time is the drunk driver who would eventually kill his dad, like 15, 20 years down the line. He shows up at this Buick 8, shows up out of nowhere. The guy driving it looks kind of weird. He's looks kind of pale, waxy pale, and he just circles around and disappears. Yeah, fill it up with oil. Fine. And he just disappears, and they can't find him again. And the guy just gone. They don't know if he was swept down by the stream behind the gas station or what, but the guy never shows up again. And they go to examine the Buick, and there's just a lot wrong with it. It's not an ordinary Buick. For one thing, the steering wheel is too large. The radio electronics, they look like they're just there for show. Dirt won't stay on it at all. I mean, they even try to put like pebbles in the tire, and the tire like gets rid of the dirt and the pebbles and everything else. It's clear that this car is not ordinary. And I'm not talking about Christine here, but it's clear this car is probably not of this earth. Of course, no one wants to say it at the time. So the troop impounds it, and it stays there for the next, it's there even now by the time the book ends. But weird things start happening. First of all, one of the troop disappears around the car, and they suspect that the car has something to do with it, but they can't prove it. Then weird things start happening. The car starts having what they call light quakes. We're talking light shows inside the car that no one can explain, and they're super bright, and it interferes with the radio in the troop. So Kurt, Ned's dad, takes a gigantic interest in the car to a point where it's almost an obsession, almost like the One Ring to Bilbo and Frodo. weird things start happening, like creatures start coming out of the trunk. Like every now and again, the first thing that gave birth, there was like a bat-like creature that flew out of its trunk. They didn't see it happen, but hey Willie, they didn't see it happen, but they found it dead in the shed. So Kurt decides to dissect it. He studies dissecting just so he can dissect it. They didn't come up with any answers, and the years go on, and gradually the kid is told the story about all these weird things that happen with the car. Eventually, like leaves come out of it, some insects come out of it. They don't know where, and over the years, it's kind of there, but it's still kind of doing weird things. Bye, Willie. Um, and of course, Curtis Curtis is he's obsessed with it, and and eventually they tell his son this over the course of time. But the thing is, Ned wants answers. He wants answers really about why his dad is dead. What's the reason to it all? Why did this happen? And then he learns more about the car. Did the car have anything to do with it? What's the deal with the car? Where did it come from? What are the reasons? And this whole book really is about not getting answers. It's about things just happening, the world starting conversations that it never finishes. And Ned just wants answers. He wants a nice, clean package of an answer, separate from everything else. But as the book teaches you, is that everything, time has changed to it. Everyone is connected to everyone else, and there's no really such thing as a clean narrative. And stories that are taking place here probably had their beginnings like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago in time. And you'll never know the whole picture. You'll never know the whole story. And that really is the point of this whole book. And the thing I like about Stephen King's writing is that he basically writes about people that I can relate to. Um, I would almost liken him to sort of like in a way, almost like a almost like a literary companion piece to say Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell, if you liked horror movies, if you liked horror novels, because Stephen King writes about the average American person. It just seems that high literature, deals with statesmen. It deals with tortured souls who but this just deals with these this troop of guys, working class guys, just trying to figure out what this weird thing is, and they don't get answers either. But like I said, I think that's the reason why I've always liked Stephen King, because I could always relate to his characters, and he treats you fairly as a reader. He explores an idea fully, and he just goes to town with it. However, I think this car, now I've never read his Dark Tower series. He's been tinkering with he's been adding to it. The Dark Tower is basically the Gunslinger saga, the Dark Tower. It's basically his, I don't want to say his answer to, but basically his magnum fantasy opus, his Lord of the Rings. And from time to time, as you read his books, some of these characters from the Dark Tower sort of leak into our world. Hearts in Atlantis, the old guy played by Anthony Hopkins in the movie, he was from Roland's world, Roland the Gunslinger's world. You got just enough to know that he was from there, but that was it. So now I'm going to have to read those 8 books eventually. Apparently, Randall Flagg from The Stand is from that world as well, and so on and so forth. A character from The Shining ends up in that saga as well. So I had this hunch that Buick either came from that world or was connected to it somehow. So I did a little research, and it's almost. I think it was on Stephen King Wikipedia or something, and it basically says that car is almost certainly a transport pod that's mentioned in the 8-book saga, because the creatures just seemed, Lovecraftian, otherworldly. And if I'm not mistaken, the creatures from the Mist also come from the Gunslinger's world, realm, dimension, whatever you want to call it. But that's neither here nor there. Stephen King believes in a shared universe. Like when I was reading Cujo once upon a time, he mentioned characters from the Dead Zone, which of course I love a shared universe, being into comics and everything. Marvel, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, the Hulk, they can all meet each other in that same world. Same with DC, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, they can all meet, they can all have team overs and crossovers. So that's what Stephen King has kind of built with himself, is a shared world, and the Dark Tower series is part of it. And yeah, I really had a good time reading this book. I really could not wait to get back to it. Stephen King was probably, other than comics, my gateway drug into just reading in general. I read his first wave of books, everything from from Carrie all the way up to Pet Sematary in the 80s. And then I stopped because I was just getting tired of the formula. You know, family moves into Maine, some weird things start happening. So I just kind of took a break for a while, it's a shame that I did, because it came out like 2 years later, and it is like this book stop of a book. And I understand that the creature that it is supposed the creature that it is really supposed to be also comes from the Gunslinger's world, but we don't know for sure. But yeah, I could see myself reading some Stephen King, some more of his stuff in the very, very near future. He's just a good yarn spinner, storyteller, and I'm going to say it, we're lucky to have him. We really are lucky to have him. And he lives, well, it's not like we're neighbors, but he lives in the state just near to me. I think he lives about within 150 miles of me or anything, but down in that corner of the Zero Room, and plus some others down there, I've got some more books there. I even have the Green Mile, like the original 6 pamphlet. It was released I think it was once a week it was released, or was it once a month? I forget which, but it was released periodically, and I gathered them all together and read it as it went, like almost like a serialized fiction back in Charles Dickens' day. He would serialize his novels in newspapers before they were published in one volume. So, okay, so folks, that's what I've got to say. Read some Stephen King. You can do far worse. He believes in the power of the story, and its transformative powers. It's elevating power, and it's very, very obvious because he deals with the subject quite a bit. There are a lot of writers that feature in his work and how they deal with the muse and everything like that. But okay, folks, this is the Scholar Gentleman signing off. Have a good one.